Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Samfiru Tumarkin Employment Law Show. My name is Sandy Chen. I'm an employment lawyer here at our Vancouver, British Columbia office. We have offices across the country, including in Ontario, and as well as Alberta. So I will be here for the next 29 minutes. We are live. And anybody from YouTube or Facebook can type in their questions in the text box, and I'll be able to see them here. I'm here to answer any and all questions related to employment law. Whether that's you're having issues at work, having issues with your boss in the workplace, if you've been let go recently and you want to talk about severance. If you want to talk about a popular topic is the vaccination policies as a result of the COVID-19 virus. Any of those topics related to your employment, I'm happy to try to answer here for the next half an hour or so. Again, I am based in BC. My colleagues from Ontario and Alberta also do these shows as well. So if I can't answer your question because you're from another province, I'm sure one of my colleagues can when they do their show. So if anybody has questions about anything, type it in the employment box or the text box here, and I'll be able to see if I can help. So we got our first question from Mark here. Mark asks, if my employer has terminated me and I do not sign any sort of a severance agreement, how long do I have to file a legal claim? Mark, that's a really good question. It's the standard limitation date is 2 years from the date you were first notified of your termination. So if your employer said, let's say January 1st, they said, Mark, we're going to let you go effective February 1st. The date starts to run from January 1st, typically. So it's not your last day of employment, it's when you were first notified. So keep that in mind. There's other limitation dates as well, Mark. So whenever you've been let go, there's other claims you can file, not necessarily for severance. You can file claims with WorkSafe BC, you can file claims with the Human Rights Tribunal, you can file claims with the Employment Standards Board. So for severance, it's generally 2 years. For other types of claims, so human rights is 1 year. Employment Standards Board is 6 months. So Mark, I think for your situation, I'd get legal advice as soon as you can, because some of these deadlines are as short as 6 months, and just see what's applicable to your case and what deadlines there are. But in general, it is 2 years to file for the severance. So we got another question here from Bonnie. Bonnie says, I'm being disciplined and then fired. And the employer is saying that you're not entitled to severance because you have to be with them for 5 years. And you're losing your job because I have to be at this time because you're not vaccinated. So yeah, Bonnie, I see a few issues with what's going on with you. And it's the vaccination issue is something that's coming across my desk a lot these days. So the first issue, Bonnie, in your case is the disciplinary measures. And it's if you can give me some more details as to what you're being disciplined for, we can talk more about it. Their assertion, the employer's assertion, Bonnie, that you're not entitled to severance just because you have not been with them for 5 years, that's not the law. And I'm talking, I guess I'll clarify that. If you're not in a union, even if you've only been with an employer for a few months, you're still entitled to severance. So it's, if you're only with them for a few months, your severance might be less than an employee with 5 years of service, but you're still entitled to it. So the 5 years thing has nothing to do with your entitlement to severance. I think the main issue in your case, Bonnie, sounds like the vaccination issue. And that is very context specific. What I mean by that is in some workplaces, if you're not vaccinated, it's possible the employer can let you go without paying you severance. In the majority of situations, and again, this is an issue that'll have to be decided by the courts. In the majority of situations where someone's let go because they don't want to get vaccinated, the employer probably will have to pay you severance money. That's not a reason for the employer to not pay severance. Again, it's fact specific, depends on the workplace and the position, but it's in most cases it's probably not a reason for the employer not to pay severance. So Bunny, I hope that kind of answers in general, some general legal information for you. If there's anything you want me to clarify, feel free to follow up in this text box. Okay, so next question is from Esmeralda. My work announced COVID policy, condition of employment, exceptions based on religion and medical. Can anybody help me from your office to submit an exception to them? I can provide a religious one, but I do not have it yet. I am located in Ottawa. Yeah, Esmeralda, I'm happy to speak with you. I'm not in Ontario, but we have most of our lawyers are actually in Ontario. Please reach out. There should be a contact on screen. Call the number. We're happy to one of my colleagues from Ontario will be happy to assist you, I'm sure. And yeah, Esmeralda, I mean, the religious exemption is a valid one. It's a matter of, proving that it's reasonable in the circumstances, and that there's other issues with the religious exemption that you can talk to, get some legal advice on. It's not as black and white as, if you have a religious exemption, the employer automatically has to accommodate you. There's more nuance than that. So next question is from L. So L says, let's say if you worked for ABC company for 20 years, then you get a job to work for their sister company, EFG. Are you still entitled to severance pay from ABC company? You live in Ontario. Yeah, Al, that's a really good question. I have a few cases right now along those lines. In Ontario, I know there's a section under the the Employment Standards Act about, I believe the term is joint employer. There's another term that judges have made. It's called common employer. I guess, Al, the question I have for you is, why is let me rephrase. Is EFG bankrupt or something that you need to get severance from ABC? Typically, those claims are possible. I know I have a few of them right now. It depends on how integrated those two companies are, and whether there is some common control amongst them. Our courts have, through the cases that have gone before them, there's actually a whole list of factors that will need to be considered to answer your question. But I guess I'll say to you, it's possible, right? If there's some reason that EFG can't pay and you have to get it from ABC, it certainly claims that have been successful in the past. And if you clarify the reason why you're looking for severance from EFG and not ABC, maybe we can talk a bit more about it. So next question is from Anita, 30-year nurse in Ontario. You've been terminated for refusal to take the vaccine. Your contract never stated vaccines were necessary. Excellent work experience. Whatever rights was it? Anita, so you're in Ontario, and I know each province has different regulations with respect to people in healthcare. BC, the government has made it mandatory for most people in healthcare. I say most, not all yet, although that seems to be the plan. Most healthcare workers in BC, the provincial government has said you have to get the vaccine. I'm actually not sure what the case is in Ontario. That's why I'm a bit hesitant in telling you what your rights are. I mean, obviously, if you've been with the same organization for 30 years, that's a very that's a tough situation. I would reach out to go on our website, go to employmentlaw.ca. There's a bunch of articles and blogs on our website. My hope is one of them answers that question, because I know it's a very popular topic. My colleague from Ontario, I think, should be here next week if you want to come back and ask him. But my recommendation to you, Anita, is go talk to a lawyer about it, an Ontario lawyer, obviously, and see what the potential is with severance. If you're unionized, Anita, I don't want to say you're out of luck, but I think that's something you need to talk to your union rep about. Because the unionized employees, the severance works a lot differently for them than for non-union people. Okay, so next question we have from Sunny. Sunny says, I've been employed with the same company for 16 years. You're in your late 40s. The company was acquired a few years ago and they have sent a new employment contract. There's a clause in this new contract that you waive your common law entitlements. They have stated that because they are offering you a signing bonus of $2,000 and a 10% increase. We have to sign. I don't want to sign. What are my options? Yeah, Sonny, that's one of the situations where you need to go get legal advice on the new contract in your particular situation. I'll say to you generally. So the reason they want you to sign it, obviously, is because if they ever have to let you go without cause, right? And without cause means you don't have to do anything wrong. They can limit you to the minimums. If you're in BC, actually, if you're in BC or Ontario, it's the same. You're going to get 8 weeks, right? So by virtue of that signing that new contract, instead of potentially over a year of severance pay, the company can say that you're limited to 8 weeks. I haven't seen your contract, Sonny. It might be more than 8 weeks. I don't know what the formula is in that termination provision. It could be something more than 8 weeks. But I think it's a safe assumption that they want to limit your severance entitlements to a specific amount that's specified in the contract. You should get legal advice on it. The reason that they're offering this bonus and the 10% salary increase, obviously they have to give you something of benefit. If you don't want to sign, you don't have to sign. I think that's the most important thing you need to know. It is a change in your employment. If you don't sign, I imagine the company, will either say, okay, Sonny, you don't have to sign. Let's just continue your employment as it is, or they'll just let you go and pay you out severance. Based on your previous employment contract, if there was one. So Sonny, I think that's hopefully that's some general information for you as to how these situations sometimes unfold. But definitely go. It sounds like a pretty go see a lawyer about it, because there's quite a bit at stake here in terms of the new contract. There's always new contracts are typically never good for an employee. Gregory, can I ask questions here? Yeah, Gregory. So if you type your question in the text box, I can't see any of you, but obviously you guys can see me. But if you type it in the text box, I'll be able to see it on my screen here. Tash Group asks, I got notice of termination. What will be my first steps? Will the initial conversation with you be free, or what will be the charge? Yeah, Tash, our intake, you please contact our intake team. They'll be able to set you up with someone. Your first steps, I would say, if they offer you a severance package, unless you just want to take it and run for personal reasons, don't sign anything, and get some advice on it first. The initial conversation with one of our lawyers, depending on the complexity of the case, it could be free or there could be a charge, and it solely depends on the complexity of the case. So I can't answer that because I don't know about your situation. More complex cases obviously take more time, and we're not able to offer free consultations for those. So Sunny, you're adding. Oh, sorry, I didn't see your 2 and 3rd part question there. Your 2nd part question: are you obligated to provide a reason for declining? My employer is saying that if we need to give them a reason if we're declining. I mean, I don't think so, but I don't see the harm in saying, that I'm declining because of the severance provision, right? And negotiating some sort of better severance provision. Again, you want to go talk to a lawyer before you, I mean, you don't have to, but you probably should. But I don't see any obligation on your part to provide a reason. You have an employment contract, right? Whether it's verbal or written, as of today. If they want to negotiate a new one, you say no. You don't have to you don't necessarily legally have to give them a reason. Your third part question, they're offering a bonus and salary increase. Can they force you to sign? No, they cannot force you to sign. They're changing the terms of your employment, and it sounds like some of it's going to be, at least in terms of the severance provision, it's not going to be as favorable. You don't have to agree. You can say no, but again, the employer can, let you go, right? Pay you severance. Or they can just say, okay, we'll drop it. We'll keep you, Sonny, you can keep working under the old terms of your employment. The other thing to be aware of, Sonny, they can give you working notice, right? Severance isn't always cash. They can say, Sonny, we're going to give you, I don't know, 12 months or 24 months working notice. Again, so these are considerations I think you need to talk to a lawyer about. Bonnie, you're saying your nurses union not being vaccinated. Yeah, Bonnie, I'm sorry, I can't. It's just out of my my area of expert. I should say it's out of my jurisdiction. I'm not comfortable. I just don't want to give you the wrong answer because I know Ontario is a lot different. But typically, if you're in a union, you're going to have to go through a grievance process, and I imagine that the union has to decide whether they're going to grieve it. And so I think you need to talk to the union rep about it. Elena asks, federal government now mandating vax on other employees like bankers and telecommunications. Even if they're working at home, how can they do that? What are my options? Yeah, Elena, I saw that news announcement come out a day or two ago. The legislation, I haven't seen it. I know that in general, the federal government's planning on doing it. I know up until now, yeah, like it was obviously the public employees and some private sectors, like I think mostly air and rail transportation. The issue is I haven't seen the legislation. I don't know if they're going to carve out an exception for people working from home. I haven't seen that in the legislations that's come out in BC. So, for example, healthcare. I haven't seen exemptions for remote workers. So I don't know how it's going to be drafted. If the government passes that legislation, it's going to be out of your employer's control. I'm assuming your employer is federally regulated. What do I mean by that is you think of it as two levels. Your employer has control of your employment, and then the government has control over your employer, right? So in terms of what you can do, if the federal government passes a piece of legislation, your employer has no control over that. So you can't really go after your employer for that. You can challenge the legislation, right? You can under the Constitution or the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I imagine that's probably, and I'm certainly no constitutional lawyer, but that's probably one way you can go is challenge the actual legislation. As far as employment law goes, it becomes out of the company's control if the government's basically saying to the company that they have to do it. So hopefully that gave you some clarity. Donna asks, what labor laws apply to stat holidays? Alberta says AB says they do not. Christmas, New Year's. Sorry, Donna, I don't know the Alberta Employment Standards Code very well. And so I'm sorry I can't answer that question for you. Elle asked, what day of time does the live Q&A session take place? Elle, I actually am not sure. Check out our Facebook page. I know that we do quite a few of these every week. And we have lawyers in Alberta as well, Donna, just so you know. We have an office in Alberta if you want to reach out. I know there's at least one more tomorrow. My colleague's coming on, and a few of my colleagues from Ontario do these. But please check our Facebook page. Anita says left up to the hospital. Yeah, and you probably know it more than I do, Anita. I know generally that Mr. Ford has not forced it. I did hear that a week or two ago, but most of the hospitals have imposed it. Circle of Courage. You're wondering how to navigate around unpaid leave of absence for 6 months without quitting your job. Yeah, I mean, sir, I guess my question for you, what's the, who initiated leave of absence for 6 months? Did the company or did you? And I guess what do you mean by navigate? If you want to leave of absence, there's reasons under employment legislation that you can take leave of absences for, and you don't have to quit your job, and they're job protected leaves. So if you can provide a bit more information. Elena. Oh, Elena, yeah. See, you. I mean, I didn't read that if you're working from home. I don't think the legislation's out yet, Elena. So I mean, they're saying things. Maybe they won't follow through. I know they're doing consultations with people right now with different stakeholders right now. So, but you could be right? Like even they might not make an exemption for people work from home. Okay, so Tax Group asks. You got an ultimatum for your first shot until Friday 17th. If I refuse, the company will terminate my employment. Shall I sound notice of liability to strengthen my severance score? Yeah, I've gotten quite a few of these questions about this notice of liability thing. I've seen a few of them. I mean, I don't see how it'll help someone's case. Frankly, in some situations, it could hurt your case if you keep sending it to your employer. My general advice is you don't need to you should not send a notice of liability. I don't see how it'll help. Especially when it comes to employment law. I don't see the value in it. Okay, so employer, so Circle, as a follow-up to your question, you're saying that they're making you take an unpaid leave of absence. I won't take the vax, so they put me on LOA, not terminate me. Yeah, that's a tricky situation. I mean, let me put it this way: if an employer in general, if an employer puts you on an unpaid leave without your permission, that in general could be a termination of your employment, right? It's called a constructive dismissal. It's because an employer can't just unilaterally put you on an unpaid leave without your permission. In your situation, Circle of Courage, it depends on whether it was reasonable for them to have implemented that vaccination policy in the first place. And that really depends on your workplace, your position, and whatever regulations govern your employer. So I think it sounds to me, Circle, you need to maybe speak with a lawyer on your situation. Certainly if you don't do anything about it, they're going to put you on a leave of absence. They're not going to pay you, and they could recall you in 6 months. I don't know. They could fire you after 6 months, depending on how I guess the COVID situation goes. But you don't have to accept that leave of absence now if it's unpaid, because you could treat that as a constructive dismissal. And I say could because the fundamental question in your case is an employer legally permitted to implement that vaccination policy at your workplace? And that's a question I don't know the answer to. Elena saying U.S. these mandates are shit. Oh, sorry, shut down. How come not in Canada? Well, I don't. I think some of the legislation is being challenged up here, Elena. I'm not sure. I know in the U.S. there, Mr. Biden has implemented. I think he's saying all businesses above a certain size have to have the or their employees have to get the vaccine. I'm sure, you know, somebody will challenge it. Maybe, I don't know. In the U.S., obviously, there's somebody challenging it. In Canada, you know, somebody has or somebody will challenge it, I'm sure. But that might be the reason for the difference. IPMMC asks, has anybody seen a situation where an employer has not said either you are vaccinated or you must submit to regular testing, but they will consider religious accommodation to actually grant one? I haven't seen any of those. I mean, I've certainly seen policies, a few come my way where employer says they will consider religious exemptions. I'm not aware of one where one was actually granted. So, yeah, Circle Coach, you're saying no just cause, just new policy. Yeah, and what I'm saying is that the policy itself could be, it could be illegal depending on your workplace and your position, the vaccination policy. And by illegal, I mean in relation to you. And I'll give you an example. If you're an office employee, you have your own office in the workplace, you know, you're separated from everybody else. I don't see why an employer is acting reasonably implementing a mandatory vaccination policy and forcing you to go on unpaid leave if you're not vaccinated, right? If you're working remotely, I don't see why it's reasonable for an employer to implement a mandatory vaccination policy. So that's what I mean by reasonable. And if the policy is not reasonable, you can treat that as an illegal policy in a sense and claim for severance. And I say could. Yeah, so sort of saying, you asked if you have a case, talk to a lawyer. I mean, I'm happy to talk to you. I think I do have availability next week if you want to set up a consultation, but talk to a lawyer in your province. Okay, so Belinda asked, your employee's head of office is in, head of operations is in Quebec. Your branch is in Ontario. They're saying we have to follow employment regulations for Quebec because this is true. Belinda, I'm fairly sure that the answer is that if you live and work in Ontario, Ontario legislation applies to you. Employment legislation applies to you. There's a section under the Employment Standards Act in Ontario. I think it's section 3 or maybe section 4 that confirms this. So if you live and work in Ontario, I think you have to be governed by Ontario legislation. Nikki says there's been 2 cases in Canada, union cases, 1 shut down, on uphill. Yeah, there's been, I think there's now 3, Nikki. I know the TTC one didn't work out. There's another one with a security company. I think there's a 3rd one. But you're right. There's cases in favor, and there's at least there's cases in favor of the mandatory vaccination. There's at least 1 case that kind of said the employer was not acting reasonably in the union context, right? There's at least 1 case where it was a union case where the adjudicator said the employer was not acting reasonably in implementing a COVID vaccination policy. Circle Change, you said you need a lawyer. You can't get severance unless they terminate you. That's not true. You could get severance if they don't explicitly terminate you. You could treat the leave of absence, the unpaid one, as a termination, but talk to a lawyer before you do that. So guys, I'll take one more question. I know we're short for time here. Again, my colleague, I'm pretty sure, is on tomorrow. His name is Dan. So please check our Facebook page or our YouTube page for that. So I'll answer one more question here. Oh, Nikki, yeah, that's the one I was talking about, the security one. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions. Jonathan, I'm not in Calgary. Sorry, I'm in BC. We have quite a few lawyers in Calgary, in our Calgary office. So please reach out. I'm sure somebody will be happy to help you. I'm sorry, I'm just not comfortable answering I don't know the Albertan laws actually very well. They're a little bit different than BC, so I just don't want to give you the wrong answer. Anyways, guys, thanks everyone for joining. I'll be back in 2 weeks. My colleague is on tomorrow if I didn't get to your questions today. But I hope everybody has a great weekend.